Talk to the camera. Let's talk about both our approaches on making exercise fun, man. I mean, think about it. You have a good perspective as an injured athlete right now on the fact that you've managed to keep moving and keep your movement fun. And now you have like little bits of your rehab to fill in gaps. You've been doing a lot of stuff with a significantly weaker hamstring and not even being aware of it because you've been doing a lot of other playful movement and having a good time with it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let's use that. Totally. That's valid. like, rehab isn't about making yourself perfect. You didn't start perfect before your injury. Rehab is about getting you to a quality of life again that feels right for you, that feels acceptable. And even if you're not within 95% of strength on one side versus the other, if you're still moving the way you want to and having a lot of fun the way you want to and your quality of life is great, then that was a rehab win.
Yeah. And as long as your capacity to move doesn't exceed your demand to move, I think that's important too.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's kind of like one of our cardinal rules that we want to follow.
Yeah, totally.
And so sorry. We were supposed to do an intro and we segued because we are idiots. Folks, I'm Robert Haddo and I'm with my colleague and friend Trevor de Groot of Play Project Parkour, and we want to talk about making rehab and exercise fun. And I don't know how many of you out there either deal with athletes you're training who you're trying to round them out and they're kind of recalcitrant to that, or if you're dealing with athletes or people who you're rehabbing and you want to give them stretches or exercises and they come back and they see you and they say, yeah, I did them, and you're like, okay, please, show me. And then no bueno. Or ask them if they did and they're like, no, I won't lie to you, I haven't done a thing. And honestly, a lot of it seems to be framing it. Instead of saying, do your exercise, we can say, okay, let's find something playful, let's find something entertaining. So we are talking about that at a parkour gym right now. Talking about the idea of changing the narrative to movement instead of exercise. Does that sound right?
Yeah, pretty much. As long as the narrative is focused on movement,
yeah.
Movement is something that people don't see as something that's a chore to do. Movement is something that we're in the process of, regardless of what we're doing in our daily life. Yeah. And I think that's a big reason as to why people don't see it as oh, that's work, versus if you frame it as do an exercise, do a workout, do this, and this is a pain. And
your work is right in the title.
100%, right? So as a result, people are less inclined to do it.
There's a physio named Ben Cormack. I don't know where he's from in England, but he's from England somewhere. Wow, my geography foo sucks. And he talks about movement snacks as part of his rehab process. And every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, that sounds so creepy. But there's another part of me that goes, but it's also brilliant.
Well, and I think it plays off the idea of movement nutrition. And I don't know if you've heard of that before.
No, I haven't.
It's honestly a pretty big thing in the fitness industry of movement snacks, movement nutrition. It's people's ways of essentially trying to sound like movement should be included in our daily routine.
It is very self-explanatory. It makes sense. I've never heard that term.
Totally. Yeah.
I bet you I've heard that term and I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember hearing it.
Yeah, for sure. So no, I think that's really important. I think that at least as therapists and as personal trainers, as massage therapists, sports injury therapists, all of the clientele that you work with regularly or colleagues that you work with regularly, I think the way that you approach turning your rehab into movement games and movement activities is the way that's going to make the general populace, the ones that don't necessarily have that athlete mindset, it's going to make those ones more inclined to do their workouts, to do their exercises, to get that rehab in and get it done. And I think that that's one of the things that is maybe missing from the world that you work in. And I think the way that people can bring that in and incorporate it in is just gamifying all of the workouts,
Well, I like that term, gamifying. I like that term. Okay. Well, yeah, I was talking to a patient today about, she just got back from a vacation in the Galapagos. In the Galapagos Islands, And she was like, oh yeah, I got back, and I mean, I had no pain while I was like walking around. We did a ton of walking, and I was on all these irregular surfaces and these lava flows, and there was just no pain. It's a lower kinetic chain problem. It's the lower limb. And she's like, it was amazing because I mean, I got back to my daily grind, and within a few days, it started to get sore again. And I mean, think about what she was doing. She wasn't going home and doing her intrinsic foot strengthening. She wasn't, okay, stretch this and do this every night and mobilize this and hold this for 30 seconds times 5 and all that stuff. She was like, I'm gonna go see the penguins. And she just walks over and sees the penguins. And she spent, a week trouncing around these islands and journeying and exploring and having fun. She was on an adventure. And she was playing. It felt good. And she got a lot more exercise, a lot more movement, a lot more rehab accomplished. And yeah, she's on vacation, so that's an outlier situation. But what if our remedial exercises were fun? I mean, I just spent 2 hours and change dicking around in a parkour gym because I'm a functional cripple. What am I ever going to want to do in a parkour gym parkour-wise? I'm not going to be like, okay, I'm going to work on my height drops today. I will say I'm going to work on my balance. I'm going to work on my static and dynamic load capacity. I'm going to work on lifting in the back with the Olympic weights. But I can be here and have a ton more fun than I can in a standard gym. I can be here and really enjoy myself and go over these crazy movement challenges that incorporate everything I need. And I feel like a bloody toddler again because it's fun and stupid and derpy. And we're like, okay, we're going to try to jump over this blue block without touching it, land on all fours, and then kind of roll away. And it's just a little hop and movement. But for someone like me with a disease that hits all my joints, it gets my hips, it gets my shoulders, it gets my elbows, my knees, my wrists, my ankles. It gets a ton. And then rolling out of that gets the spinal column mobilized. That gets a lot more core involvement. And I have these series of movements that I didn't realize how much work I just had. And they contribute to my daily needs. They contribute to my rehab. They contribute to reducing my daily pain levels. And with something like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that's a big, big deal. And I come in, I'm in a really, really high pain state, and now I'm a lot more manageable. I would not have done it if I was at a gym, though. At a regular gym, I would have had a regimented workout. I may or may not have followed that to the letter. I would have had a harder time motivating than coming here and being a goofball for 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that the idea of play and the idea of playing through movement allows us to be way more exploratory compared to like something that's more regimented, like a workout plan or whatever it may be.
Like novelty in movement, you mean?
Yeah, novelty in movement, as well as just the fact that like incorporating play allows the exploration of your body in ways that you wouldn't have necessarily, which is a double-edged sword kind of, because you have to be careful with that, of course. You don't want to exceed your limits.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like through the playing that we did tonight with that blue block challenge, for instance, like we're able to assess and diagnose through that, to understand like, hey, this is feeling iffy about my body, or this maybe should be something that I work around, And so I think that's another benefit that you're going to see of like just exploring different types of movement and playing through that as well. Even though you have your goals of what you need to work on in terms of your physical training, right? But like if you had a very regimented plan of like, these are my exercises and that's that, you might not have explored those other movements that led you to discover that, oh, this hip flexor is tight, or this is this, So,
yeah. Well, like that groin tear I have feels a lot less painful right now than it did 6 hours ago. I mean, I couldn't even lift my leg like that before, but I also did a bunch of hip and groin mobility and a bunch of, what do you call them? Sumo squats. And a bunch of kind of, deep hip mobility and loading, and now they feel pretty serviceable. I feel like I go for a hike and I wouldn't pay for it tomorrow. Although I might pay for the workout tomorrow, so you never know. Yeah. And one addendum. Trevor can use the word diagnose because he's not a registered healthcare practitioner. We cannot. Do not do that. It's bad. You're like,
hello.
Not
hello. Registered healthcare
Trevor de Groot, not registered? Let me diagnose you.
Well, obviously I'm not going to diagnose, but I'm just saying, like at least for me, I like to use movement to explore my body in that way.
Yeah.
And I think like the idea of gamification that we were talking about earlier too is like there's certain like industries or apps that have like capitalized on that, like Fitocracy, for instance. Have you heard of that?
No.
So photography is like essentially an athletic social network where you rack up points for the workouts that you do.
Okay.
And so they're essentially gamifying working out. And there's like leaderboards and stuff like that.
Wait, was the guy who started it actually in Oakville?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea, but all I know is like that's another example of like that happening in the fitness industry, and the amount of people's lives that have changed as a result. You know,
Yeah.
like obviously it's not like this widespread thing that everyone knows about necessarily, but I definitely know that like it's helped some people out who wouldn't have worked out or gotten in shape otherwise. You know.
Yeah.
So I just think like even just something as simple as attributing points to something is just reconceptualizing how you're framing something. So you can do the exact same workout and prescribe the exact same workout that you might to someone that like wasn't gamifying something, but you can simply attribute points to something, or simply like, oh, can you do this while doing this as well? You know, to add an element of challenge. And all of a sudden, like that workout or that exercise turns into something that, hey, I want to do. I want to see if I can beat that, or I want to see if I can best that. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that, so there's a couple concepts in this that kind of get bandied about a bit, and one of them is compliance. We want a high level of patient compliance with remedial exercise and with kind of staying the program with your rehab and things like that. But the other one is, in theory, like in my field, in theory, if I'm doing my job right, I make myself obsolete. If I do a good job with my patient, if they end up informed, empowered, comfortable, and if they end up with their rehab meeting their daily needs. For some people that might be being in no pain. For some people that might be, it's impossible to not be in pain. Yeah, it's impossible to not be in pain, but can I have a good quality of life anyway? Like, does that pain stop me, and do I still get to enjoy my life? Because, I mean, again, for me, I'm never going to be pain-free. But I can still have a damn good vacation. I can still have a damn good work week. I can still have a damn good time visiting my family or something. It doesn't have to stop my life. It just means I have to take it into account. And so for some people, I mean, compliance is going to be that balance, that check and balance of, oh God, I'm tired today and I don't feel like doing my mobility exercises, or I don't feel like using the door frame and doing these pulls and these pushes and these stretches. But it might feel great going to a climbing gym. I mean, that was revolutionary for me, was finding climbing. It took my rehab, which was a task, and probably took care of 60% of it in a way I didn't have to think about.
That's really good.
I mean, with what we were talking about with you, I mean, are you okay if we talk about?
Go for it.
Okay, so Trevor had, when was it? Last year in?
It's exactly a year.
Oh shoot. Okay,
Was the
so
surgery.
a year ago, about this month, Trevor had his ACL replaced. They did a hamstring autograft. So that's a procedure where they take a segment of hamstring tendon and they drill through the bone and they insert that where the ACL would be, and that becomes your new ACL. And since it's an autograft, you have no worry about immune system attacking it. You have no worry about rejection, things like that. It's win-win. But after rehab for that, after operation for that, our rehab has to include, the standard calm shit down, build shit up. We want to calm down anything that's spasming and ticked off. We want to get ranges of motion back up to full. We want to get strength back up to full. If we follow something like the Melbourne protocol, we're looking at measuring strength in hamstrings and quads and balance and in different movements, repetitions to failure, and we want to try to hit I think within 95%. Yeah. And so one of the things we've been talking about, Trevor's like, I found out my hamstring is way weaker than I thought, but he's been training a lot. He's been moving a lot. And so according to some of those protocols, like we have them pretty dialed in, and then he kind of stopped training that, but he kept moving. So the hamstring doesn't measure as strong now, but his movement capacity is better than it was when the hamstring was measuring really strong. And now he's like, I got to start working on the hamstring. I found out it's weak and it's a little cranky sometimes, but I've also been doing these tricks and these stunts again, which I would have thought I would need the hamstring to be the same strength for.
And so, like, for me, the way I see that is, like, I've been moving maybe around this strength and balance or whatever it may be, which is okay until a point,
Until you need that one thing.
Until I need that one thing, right? And so, like, the way I want to address that, and, like, I know, at least for me, like, for that, I need to take a more specific approach, and that's why, like, for me, the way I've been trying to address it is literally like very specific of hamstring workout instead of like trying to incorporate that necessarily into a lot of my play.
Yeah.
Mind you, when I'm like climbing or whatever, I'll try and put like an extra little pull on the heel hook or whatever it may be, just to make sure that like, hey, I can still use that functionally as well. But like, I think
and I was talking about neuro-optimization. The idea that your nervous system takes what it's got and learns to use it to the highest effect. And so we could say, remove a hamstring muscle, and your nervous system says, I do not know how to work with that yet, but I will. Or we could shorten the leg, or we could introduce an ostomy through your abdominal, your core muscles, for say an ileostomy or colostomy bag, and your nervous system starts learning how to reintegrate a functional capacity of movement, or re-educate to a functional capacity of movement around a physical change, and you re-neuro-optimize. And so for your hamstring, you said, okay, fine, I'm going to Webster. I'm going to kick like this, and I might create more angular movement through my hips and less linear movement from the hamstring because
right?
and ultimately you still put the same clip.
Yeah, it feels slightly different, and it's interesting because like I think with that kind of like the thing I guess that bothers me about it is if I still had that same strength capacity, and that's what I'm working towards, and I did the flip the same way that I'm doing now, like I wonder where I would be then, you know? Like there's nothing I guess that can hurt from doing the specific training on that specific part of my body that I need to work. But at the same time, the reason why I'm attacking it that way is because I know me as a person. If I tried to incorporate that in my play, like I also feel like play is a little bit of a double-edged sword because like for me, I get distracted. I have movement ADD, so I'm like, oh,
Yes.
I'm gonna go do this now.
I know. I've been there when you were trying to focus on your rehab, and it was like herding cats.
Yes.
Yes.
And so as a result, like I sometimes prefer those more structured approaches, and especially because like when I'm doing like a workout versus play, I see it as like
This is work mode.
Yeah, this is like me being serious now, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important sometimes, especially if I understand that there's more potential for injury with that.
Yeah. So going to what you said about, okay, I can't remember which. Your right leg is your kick leg for your Webster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Say your left leg was your kick leg, and we had that, weaker hamstring on the left side. It would depend, because when you're kicking, you're going to turn your leg out to compensate around the hamstring, and that'll use your abductors and your external rotators to essentially create the same moment of inertia from your leg into your core to pull you over the same way. Your arms generate momentum, as does your leg, right? So if you continue with that same movement pattern where the leg turned out and kicked up instead of staying kind of an A to P or a front to back pattern and kicking up through extension, a stronger hamstring probably wouldn't make a lot of difference. It might, but it's essentially off axis from the hamstring and it's on axis for, I guess, posterior oblique subsystem. So you're gonna, I guess that would be posterior oblique subsystem. You'll still be using glute max and everything. And so I don't know that the stronger hamstring will make much of a difference.
So what I'm talking about is not using necessarily the same technique, but I've practiced the technique before when my hamstring was strong.
So like reloading up the old protocol.
I've practiced a technique now that works around that hamstring. Mm-hmm. What if I combine? What if I amalgamate in the middle? What's that going to look like? Let's explore that at least and try and understand there. And can I kill any other weaknesses in the process by doing that? Now using
like movement weaknesses you had before, you mean?
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's just like things like that I'm interested in exploring is like, okay, so I've had to work around this hamstring issue. I now Webster a little bit of a different way. And all of a sudden, if I build that strength back and I'm capable to Webster the same way I was before, there's now a range of motion in the middle where I didn't turn my hip out as much that like I haven't necessarily explored. So can I work on that now and try and get that better to the point where it feels like the other two,
So could you take the compensated pop and not pivot the pelvis, or could you take the non-compensated pop and pivot the pelvis and do something entirely different?
Exactly.
Like when we did with Anthony the other day where we were talking about, he was trying to work on landing something, you were getting a flash kick, and his flash kick, he lands really open and externally rotated, and it's like, that's not what you want to land, but it does set you up for this afterwards, which is pretty cool, which the original flash kick wouldn't.
Totally.
Is that?
Yes, that's kind of similar. So I'm not necessarily talking about using the same technique that I would now, But
Yeah.
I'm talking about modifying my technique based on what that strength training opens up, right?
Yeah, basically you have new avenues to
Exactly. So.
dick around with that. That'd be pretty fun.
Totally. Especially if it's measured a little bit.
I totally want. Okay, not tonight, but we should actually set that camera, and we should mess around with that and see. It's gonna feel probably really funky for you to try to move back the other way. What are we looking at to get the hamstring strength up? Another 6 to 8 weeks on average, if we wanted to focus on that again. Probably shorter. I mean, you've already been working on it. I'm totally down to do that. We can even talk about when I get back from San Diego.
I'm super game. We just gotta wait till I can train the hamstring again. I overdid it. What? I don't know. So I'm really determined to try and even that out. And I was like training a little bit too hard with my hamstring, and I pulled the hamstring muscle. It happens.
So he did a couple days in a row, but the big precipitating factor was using it was a pull-up assist band, right? Yeah. So Trevor was using a pull-up assist band and doing a modified. I don't know if you don't know what a tantrum is. A tantrum is where you you'd have that ball sitting on your butt. You'd lay on your stomach, and you'd kick, alternating against the ball.
So I wasn't kicking.
And we've modified that where he'll lay on the stomach, have the pull-up assist band anchored to his foot, and he holds. He has to try to hold it asymmetric. And since that band is really stretchy and hard to stabilize, you're gonna have these almost micro contractions or these micro repetitions as you're bouncing to hold it stable. It's a great way to focus on like all these little micro eccentric loads and really load up the muscle at that range. And you can go 10 degrees, 10 degrees, 10 degrees, work through full range, but it's also a great way to overtrain. And Trevor did that, and then trained hard the next day, and taught a private lesson as well or something?
No, honestly, like I don't think the private lesson, like looking back at it and knowing that it's hamstring related now, I don't think the private lesson necessarily had any play in it.
Yeah.
Teaching the private lesson, I didn't do anything that was crazy. I did some like dive rolls and stuff like that, but I was just demoing, you know, like I wasn't doing anything out of the norm or anything.
Yeah, dive roll wouldn't be too much on that.
Like that was really that, and I demoed a couple of little vault challenges, but like I really don't think that did it, but it was after the private lesson happened that I realized, oh, this feels funky. And that was because that was the first time I'd moved since I worked out the previous day before and overdid it with the hamstrings. And I really think a big part of it as well is the fact that like when I'm doing those holds and stuff, I was holding at different degrees of ankle rotation.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that.
And so I feel like the main issue with that is when I overdid it, the other kind of ranges of motion were already tired out as well, and so there wasn't anything that could save me. You know, I couldn't like just cheat it to be like, oh, okay, because I was burnt. You know.
One thing to cover when he says ankle rotation,
Or not ankle, hip
it's knee rotation. It's going to be like different degrees of say tibial torsion on the femur. So kind of theoretically focusing on different amounts of hamstring regroupment, medial to lateral hamstring group relative to internal to external rotation respectively. And yeah, it's a good way to fine tune, but it's also a good way to take you to a high level of fatigue. And if you're already fatiguing yourself in neutral and then fatiguing yourself further, it's a really sneaky way to overtrain yourself and not realize you did it. Speaking from experience on that.
The funny thing is, like obviously, like I was training both sides for this when I was doing it, and like this side wasn't sore at all.
Yeah.
Even though I was using a way heavier band on that side, you know. So it's just like a little bit frustrating that way to know like. Maybe it's not necessarily the power, but it's the endurance of that power. It's the power over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what did it because in those short bursts I was fine, but just the amount of like times that I did it, the amount of reps, was just a little bit too much greater than my capacity. So.
Yeah. Well, it happens.
Yep.
And
a couple weeks I should be okay then.
Sooner than that.
No.
Oh no. Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
A couple weeks.
Well, it's been a week. Right, so as of so it happened last Sunday, I guess. So in 2 days it'll have been a week, and it feels a bit better, but not much. And part of the reason why though is I've been still training on it, and I need to relax a little bit. I think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you want to let active recovery happen, but also balance active recovery. And again, the way you train, the way you move, the way you play is unregimented. So
when I have movement ADD and I'm in here, it's just like people are
you're like,
doing
ooh, new bar setup. Oh, someone's trying a new challenge.
100%, right? So that's what ends up happening. So.
But yeah, so we kind of segued a little bit, but you get the idea. by the fact that we segued so much. You can take your remedial exercises and make them stupid fun. You can take your remedial exercises and make them less exercises and more play. Gamification. You can gamify them. I was like, what's the word he used? You can gamify them. You can make your approach to your recovery a lot less arduous. I have to put in so much bloody work on my body because it's destroyed and it's annoying. But if I can at least take like half of that, maybe 2/3, and make it a lot less arduous, a lot less, I have to do my rehab, and a lot more, oh God, I hope I can climb that 510 plus. Oh, I wonder if I can stick the landing on that precision trainer. I wonder if I can sidestep and land left and my ankle will feel stable. Rather than, oh, I have to try doing this 10 times. It takes a ton of the pressure off. It makes my life a lot less strenuous. It's not easier. I'm still doing the same work, but I don't feel like it. You got anything to add on that?
No, I think we're good to leave it there. That was good.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks kindly, and hope you enjoyed.